Thanks. Okay, and that was Jennifer Watson, Agorapulse. Absolutely fantastic. Hope you learned loads about live streaming there. But now what? We're going to head over to Adam Barry's talk, and he's going to be talking about why creativity fuels social growth. Adam is a co-founder and creative director at Electric House, and these guys are literally so creative with their content. Absolutely amazing. Adam, let's roll the video, and over to you.
Oh, hello. I hope I'm live. Yes, I'm live. Hello, everyone. That video is amazing. Well done, guys. Hopefully my presentation is loaded in. There we go. Right. Okay. Fantastic. So, hello, everyone. My name is Adam Barry. I am the creative director and co-founder of Electric House. And what is Electric House, I hear you all ask? It's a social media publishing group, and that does sound like a made-up name, and that's because it is. But in simple terms, we create content, we produce content, we distribute, and we amplify video content through our social media communities. And just a little bit more about why I'm here, and I guess, you know, hopefully why you should be listening to me is not only do we do work for our clients and manage their social media and campaigns, we also grow our own communities on social. So the one there that you can see at the top is On The Tools. It's a UK-based construction community, so quite a niche community, but we've got just under 5 million followers across those social channels, and we'll work with brands that want to reach our audience, from McDonald's through to more industry-specific brands like Bosch Power Tools. Then we have On A Budget. On A Budget is a community of 3.4 million followers, predominantly made from Facebook groups, with our biggest group having about 2 million members in, and that's DIY on a budget. And there's 8 groups altogether, anything from DIY to cooking to parenting, and that is the opposite of On The Tools in terms of demographic. It's 94% female. And then we have a newly launched community called Ministry Of, and that's on TikTok only. So we launched that around 12 weeks ago. We've already amassed 340,000 followers, and we have a number of channels under that banner, which is like Ministry of Science, Ministry of Munch, Ministry of Life, so educational content and inspiring content. So today I'm going to be talking about creativity, what it is, how to enhance creativity for social media content, and our internal creative process. But before we go on to that, I'm going to have a sip of my water and apologise because I am full of cold at the minute. So I'm probably going to be sneezing and sniffing my way through this presentation. So I do apologise in advance. Well, let's get into it. So what is creativity? The age-old question that nobody seems to give a straight answer to. And I think if you ask a number of people what creativity is, you'll probably get a number of different answers. But if you look at it, it is the use of imagination or original ideas to create something inventiveness. So when you think of that, you think of people who make things, chefs, filmmakers, artists, inventors, and it is people who make things, but it's also people like me, who I don't class myself as a majorly creative person. You know, I don't write songs, I don't make things like an artist does, but I can still be creative. And sometimes it's just using existing things, putting them together to make something new. So like the old phone, a computer, mash them together, and then the iPhone's born. Or you can take a big pile of shit, a blonde wig, and you can create a president. So there you go, a little gag for you. Bit Brenty that was, wasn't it? So I think we're all creative, every single one of us. I just think that we need a wider definition of what creativity is. And I think the people that you see that are creative, I think they've just found a good way to channel their creativity through processes. Which brings me on to creativity can't be put into one box. So it's many different things. It's looking at ways to understand data differently. So it's problem solving, hacking systems, creating processes. And I think we use creativity in our everyday life, even without realizing it. And I think there's a feeling that because your job title or job description doesn't necessarily have the word creative in it, you can't be labeled as a creative. But I think some of the most creative people that I know don't even work within the creative industry. But for those that do, I think that the key to being truly creative is by putting processes or tools in place to enhance those. So I've got TikTok as an example here of, in my opinion, it's one of the most creative social platforms in the world right now. And it's all down to the tools that it puts in front of its users. So everyday people like me can blow up on TikTok and go viral. And I think, yes, some of that is to do with how the platform algorithms work, but it's also because you can be so creative on there. You're able to express yourself with thousands of different effects. And I think without these effects, you just wouldn't see the same content. But with those tools in place, our brains can make a connection with them. And we start thinking about ways how we can use those tools with our ideas together, combine them to create something either unique, something funny, something educational in a way that probably hasn't been done before. And that is creativity. So how to enhance creativity for your social media content. I'm going to apologize again. I've got to keep drinking water. I'm full of cold. And the next slide I'm going to show you, please don't run away because, you know, maybe you was coming in here expecting me to show you all the best creative campaigns in the world right now, but I'm pretty sure you guys can go and look at that for yourself. What I want to do is show you how these campaigns get created. It's no good showing you the end product. I think the value you're going to take away from this is showing you how we got to that end product. So here we go. Data and platforms, super interesting. But I believe that these two things are the fundamentals when coming to do creative content and really understanding what data is and what platforms means. So let's delve into data. When I used to hear the word data, someone that historically didn't come from a marketing world, I'd instantly become disconnected because I never really understood what data meant and how I could find it. And when I could find it, what do you do with it? But fortunately for us now, we've got multiple ways of finding data and understanding it. And some social platforms have quite extensive backends like Facebook Creator Studio. YouTube have the same, where you can go through the data from your community and get a clear understanding of what works and why. Other tools like Sprout Social are fantastic for analytics and listening to what your community is saying to you as a brand, but also to each other within the comment sections. And then there's good old-fashioned and highly underrated desk research, which is one of my favorites. So you've got hundreds, thousands, millions of articles, blog posts, videos, books of information that's available, and it's completely free. But you have to have that understanding of the data before you can start thinking about forming a creative post, video, article, or campaign. So this is a screenshot here, and I'm going to show you just a couple of examples of how we find data and then how we sort of analyze that data. So this is a screenshot from Facebook's Creator Studio. And this is a video that we've had on our page. It's quite a long video, it's 3 minutes long. But if you go into Facebook's Creator Studio and you look at audience retention, which is under the retention tab, you can start looking at why people dropped off from your content. So this example here, we've got quite a steady viewership up to about 14 seconds. There's not much drop off, it's nearly at 100%. So that can tell us two things. One, what happened in that first 14 seconds for that content to be so good that people didn't leave? And two, what happened after that 14 seconds for people to leave quite quickly? And as you can see, it's quite a quick decline. So if you take the first 14 seconds, what we like to do is just pull out as many things as possible. And Facebook don't give you this information. This is stuff you've just got to find for yourself. So you can just try and pull out the positives within that 14 seconds. What was actually happening in there? What was happening visually, verbally? Was there any twists? And before you know it, if you do this over a number of videos, you can start to form a pattern and you can start to build in, okay, our most successful videos had these key things in them in the first 14 seconds. And then that can help you come up with a creative. Equally, if you look at why people dropped off at that 14 seconds mark, start looking at what was on screen when that happened. And this particular video, it was a compilation of, say, 10 to 15 short videos crammed into one 3-minute video, and there was a bit of a narrative underneath. But at this part of 14 seconds, it was somebody filming a CCTV monitor. It was very, very shaky. It was really grainy. The footage wasn't fantastic. So what we took away from that was that our audience is used to seeing better quality in terms of production, and that is really something that they care about. And when they saw that, it just turned them off when they left. So that helps us then moving forward into our creative process, because we think, okay, well, we've learnt what works. Equally, we've learnt what doesn't work. So when we start coming out of ideas, we're very, very quick to start forming a decent creative. Another thing we do, sorry, I'm going to keep doing this. There we go. Another thing we do, which, you know, this isn't groundbreaking, and I think a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today isn't, but we create a lot of campaigns and a lot of successful campaigns. And last year, we were sort of the most viewed branded partner when it comes to entertainment, with over 100 million views for our clients. So we kind of do know what we're doing. And this here is a pen portrait, and we have one of these for every audience, and we have multiple actually, because sometimes it's very, very difficult to just say that's our audience. But this is just one example of a pen portrait on a budget. So on the left hand side, we've got Tony. She's 34 and she's located in Greater Manchester. Those are the insights that we drag off Facebook. So what we can do there is we can look at the average age and the most popular location as well. Excuse me. And in the middle there, we've got favourite brands and where Tony spends her downtime. And we do this through insight. So we'll run regular polls, surveys through our groups and through our Facebook page to try and get an understanding of really what our audience are like and what they like to do, where they like to spend their downtime. Because that, again, just helps us start forming the creative. Because if we work with a brand and they want to reach this audience, and let's say they're a high-end brand like Gucci, well, we'd never do that, because that isn't what they're about. It's not what they like. They don't shop at Gucci. They shop at Home Bargains and Wilko and George. So again, when you're coming up with creative ideas, it's super important to, one, not only understand how your content has performed in the past, which is the data, but two, truly understand who your target customers are or who your audience is. So every creative should start with data and end with data. And you know who said that? It was me just now. Good little gag for you. I know what you're thinking. Bit of Brent. Yes. Okay, right. Let's get stuck into platforms. Another boring word, but I think it's very important to understand how platforms work. And I was listening in throughout the day in between meetings, and I know that people were talking about this. There was a panel with the fantastic Will Bonadeo on, and they touched on understanding the platforms and creating content specifically for those platforms. So if you're anything like me, you might not be consistent on all the platforms. And it's actually very difficult to be consistent on all platforms because there's so many of them. I've got an account for all of them, but I don't necessarily use them. And I used to only create and consume content through, let's have a look, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So when I'm trying to come up with creative posts or creative campaigns for other social channels, the ideas might be fantastic, but if they're not created with the understanding of the social channel that it's being posted on, then it isn't going to work. And I see lots of brands still doing this, where they'll create something for TV and it just doesn't translate. So I think they make a mistake of creating content that doesn't sit on social. It's an afterthought. And like I said before, it might be the best idea in the world, but if it's not made with how people consume content psychologically, it's not going to work. And people's minds are in a different space when they're on Facebook compared to when they're on TikTok. So 88% of Facebook users are on the platform to stay in touch with friends and family. Now, I'm focusing on Facebook here because I don't think we've got enough time to sort of like go through each social channel and the behaviours of people on those, but this is just an example. So that was taken from Sprout this year. And if you have a look at this, we've got 88% of people use Facebook to stay in touch with friends and family. If you look over to the other side there in the yellow ring, we've got only 17% of people actually follow brands and companies. So they only use Facebook to follow brands and companies. Now, I go on Facebook to look at what my friends and family are doing. So if a brand wants to capture my attention, they need to be doing something very creative to make me stop scrolling. And when you really have an understanding of how and why people are scrolling through their feeds on certain platforms, that is when you're going to have the edge over the rest of the content in the feed, which is essentially competition. Can I apologize one more time? So let's have a look at our internal creative process. Now, we can all come up with a great idea, and I actually believe that the idea is the smallest part of what we're trying to do. Sorry, I think I've skipped too quickly. There we go. We can all come up with a great idea, and I actually think it's like 3% of the overall picture. You come up with an idea, but then you've got to start thinking about, okay, what's worked before, look at the data. Then you've got to start thinking about the platform, and you've got to start thinking about your audience. So the idea is the smallest part. So creativity as a whole is very, very difficult. Oh, this is skipping now in front of my eyes. Not too sure why this is happening. Try and go back. I think I'm fighting against the system. Yep. Seems to be, my slides just seem to be scrolling on their own. Yes, they are. Oh, no, please go back. Okay, hopefully it stays on this slide. Yes, I think it stayed. Brilliant. So we built our process from understanding the platform, the data behind the content's performance, and then understanding the community themselves. So what I'm about to show you is an example for one style of video on one platform. So we have one of these for every single style of video for every single platform, because this one is for Facebook and it's for a sketch. So if we're going to make a sketch for a brand on Facebook, this is what we use. If we're going to make a sketch for a brand on YouTube, it's a completely different set of rules. And I'll go into these because I know it's difficult to see, but I'll go into these now. But we start with video length, and it's minimum of 60 seconds, maximum of 90 seconds. And that's probably not common on Facebook as a whole, but that is what we found our audience likes. So when we're creating sketches, they only seem to do very, very well when they're between 60 and 90 seconds. And we do that because we look back at, say, let's look back at 20 sketches we've done with brands, and we look at the most popular ones. And the common thread there is the better ones were between 60 and 90 seconds. So I'll try and run through some of these now. Now, I know this has been mentioned today and probably mentioned numerous times throughout this event. And also, I probably think it's something that everyone knows about. But for us, what does the 3-second rule actually mean? Well, it means it's got to be visually striking. So something's got to be visually happening. You can get away with putting a caption and grabbing that attention, but in those first 3 seconds, it really needs to grab your attention. And what we found with our sketches is when there's been a gag or there's been a theme of danger or drama, that is when they perform really well. And the reason we found out this, because again, we've looked back at the best performing sketches and you pull out keywords and then you try and form a pattern. So there we've took the best ones. We've gone, okay, these 7 out of 10 of these videos have had an element of danger or drama in them from the offset. So that helps us then start forming our creative ideas. Next up, does it hold the attention past the first 10 seconds? What we've done in the past is we've concentrated so much on that first 3 seconds that we kind of just dropped the ball after that and didn't worry about it. And we found through looking at the data, and when people tend to drop off a video, you've got much more chance of people going on to watch the video for longer if they get past that 10 seconds mark. But again, this data is for our audience, not yours. So it might work the same, but you've got to try and find that out looking back through your audience retention on all of your content. And then, is it relatable? So for us, if this is on the tools, it's a construction-based community. So they like to look at things that are relatable to them. So is it focused on the industry or trade specific? Because if it's set in an office and there's no one there that looks like a builder, instantly they're just going to go, no, this isn't for me. Is it professional and personally relatable? So again, if you're going to go niche on niche, the construction order itself is quite niche. And if you're going to target, let's say, paint and decorators within that niche, you need to make sure that you're featuring paint and decorators within the video. And then, is it personally relatable? Well, that could be, I've got an example of a video further down where it was a lockdown one. So yes, it's personally relatable because everyone in the world at that time was going through lockdown. And then does it appeal to people outside of the trade? So not all of our clients are construction-based clients. So we work with people like McDonald's who want to reach our audience. But in the brief there, we might have to reach a wider audience. But we'll start with the construction audience because it will have all the things I've just mentioned in terms of relatability. But equally, can somebody outside of the trade still relate to it? Just because it's builders in there doesn't mean that they can't. And again, the example that I've got further down is lockdown. So yes, it was aimed specifically at painters, but everyone was experiencing it and everyone was at home at the time. So it does appeal to people outside of the trade. Is it engaging with sound off? This is a big one for me because still so many people don't do it, but 85% of videos are watched with the sound off. So you need to make sure, it's very, very difficult in a sketch. You're just solely relying on subtitles, but what we try to do is we try to make them fast-paced and visually you can see what's going on, as well as the subtitles sort of adding to that. But that is definitely something that you need to be thinking of at the start of every creative. Is it socially relevant? Is it in line with current trends? Is it of the moment, related to a current event? Or is it socially irrelevant? Now, what we've done in the past is we've probably jumped on a trend too late, and it's actually done more harm than good because it's kind of been done then. And it just, one, it makes you look like you're not quick enough to make a decision. And two, you just end up looking a bit like an idiot because it's past. So is it socially relevant at the time or is it socially irrelevant? They're things we think about in the creative. Is it social content? So again, coming back to what I said earlier, does it feel too TV? If we're going on Facebook, we need to make sure that it feels like Facebook. And that's not just down to sizing, but equally, we've got to make sure it fits with the time length on there. And a lot of times people will create content for YouTube and then just post it on Facebook. And sometimes it does work because that's maybe because their audience has it that way, but our audience likes their content to be specific to that platform. Is engaging? Again, the big question out of all of these is why would someone engage with it? And that's a question we ask during the creative and after the creative. If you can't answer that question, we have to go back to the drawing board because ultimately what is going to get that content flying through the feed is people having conversation within the comments. And the bigger the conversation, the better. It's not good enough anymore that people just tag their friends. What we want is lengthy conversations because that's what works when you're on Facebook. And then, is it snappy? So does the video feel slow and are there enough gags? Again, this has all come back from looking at the videos that have performed really well against videos that haven't. And that is a common thread that we've seen. And is it pro-construction? We have a fine line between laughing with the audience and laughing at the audience, and we need to make sure that if we're going to have a bit of a joke with them, that it's done in good humor and they don't turn around and say, well, we're just taking the piss, basically, which we have had in the past. Okay, this seems to be working. No. Okay, unfortunately, the videos aren't working. That is definitely my issue, I think. I had two examples in here, one that worked really well, which was basically a decorator in lockdown. He couldn't go to work, but he's walking around the house thinking of different ways of how he can still apply his trade to his everyday life. So you had him sort of like buttering his toast with his paintbrush and things like that. And then the other example was of a sketch we'd done that was just really slow, drawn out. It's about 5 minutes long. Nothing happened within the first 3 seconds. It wasn't very snappy and it didn't perform very well. So, gutted I couldn't show you those. Definitely don't think they're going to work. No. Okay, it's okay. So always review the social process. And again, these are things, hopefully you can take some good takeaways from these, but these are things that work for us from the data we've collected on the content's performance, also from the audience, and also from the platforms. But as you all know, the social landscape changes so quickly that everything I've talked about is soon going to be out of date and we're going to have to review it. So basically, that was all probably a waste of your time. So there we go. That's me done.
Thank you. Hi, Adam. How are you doing? Thank you for such a great talk.
I'm very well.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Very good. This is we're towards the end of 3 days of doing this, so there's been a lot to do, and there's been a lot of really amazing talks, and yours was definitely one of the highlights. And we have a few questions for you, but I can't ask all of them to you because you were ever so fashionably late today. So I'm going to just start with, if that's okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Aman Chohan says, what's the idea's lead time between creating content that is socially relevant and actually posting it up?
I mean, it completely depends on what's happening in the world, doesn't it? So if you was to take something like the Ice Bucket Challenge, I think that was over the course of a few months. So you kind of do have that ability to be quick on there. So I think you've just got to judge it. Sometimes we had a lot of people sending things into us after the fact, and it just wouldn't work because we have a lead time where it's like sometimes it's like 4 weeks to turn a piece of content around, especially if it's a sketch and it's a big production, and we have to take that into account. But I really guess it's is it relevant? So like now people are getting back to work. You wouldn't post about being stuck in the house, and it's just the same thing. I think you just got to look at the landscape and judge it yourself.
I hope that answers your question. And we have a couple of other questions. So Emily's asking, can you give some tips on coming up with creative, humorous content for an industry that you personally don't know lots about?
No, this is the key. So for me, because we have On the Tools, prior to the 6 years I've spent in marketing, I was actually in the trade for 12 years. So my understanding of the trade is why I can come up with, why we've managed to come up with such great creative ideas. And then it just comes back to understanding your audience. So that pen portrait I've shown you, really get to know what people think about, what their buying habits are, where they spend their downtime, because that's how you understand it. So I don't really understand that world as well as someone else if we talk about DIY on a budget, because it's predominantly female, and I'm not part of that community. So I've had to work a lot harder to understand what it is they're going to like. But that all comes down to looking at the data behind it. I know it's a terrible word. It's super boring, but you just have to do it.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? Actually, we do have another question as well, and it's about Twitter. They want to know, it's Michael Younger, and he wants to know, how do you source data from Twitter?
So it's a difficult one, really. We tend to use predominantly Facebook and Facebook groups to get insight for our audiences. But Twitter, insight can come from comments. If you ask a question, anyone who comments, that's insight. That's somebody talking to you about something. So again, it doesn't have to be the insights that you see in Creator Studio. You can literally find what is it you want to find out from your audience, ask the question, and then just look at what they're telling you. It's pretty much how we've built our business, if I'm being honest with you. And a lot of our content ideas, we'll ask the audience, what is it you want to see more of? Or out of these things, what do you find most funny? And then we'll just go, okay, well, that one got the most engagement. Let's create some content around that.
Yeah. That's awesome that you're not overcomplicating things. You're just giving the audience what they want, basically, which is so important.
So easy, it really is. But I've done it in the past where I don't want to do that. Where's the golden nugget? Give me these magic ideas, but it's literally in front of you. It's just data and understanding the platform.
Amazing, thank you. Well, along with the questions, we had a few people saying, please don't apologise, get well soon, Adam, and they've got a lot of sympathy. You're not feeling very well at the moment.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Thank you, guys. So, Adam, thank you for joining us, even though you're not feeling very well. We do really appreciate it. It was a great talk. Where can these guys go to find you if they want to ask you any questions? Will you be able to answer their questions in the app at some point as well?
Yes. So the best place to find me is LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn every day. I post every day religiously. So add me on LinkedIn, Adam Barry. So yeah, that's probably the best place. But yes, I will stay on the app and I will be answering questions.
Adam, thanks again. You've been utterly amazing. A round of applause for Adam on the virtual social tape stage. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, guys.